Hello, and on behalf of Mediledger, I'd like to welcome you all here today for our presentation on distributed ledger technology. So to begin, what is Mediledger? Mediledger is a decentralized ledger technology for the pharmaceutical supply chain. We are the business development team from Mediledger, and you are the Chief Technology Officer and Chief Information Security Officer from Johnson & Johnson in America. So to give you an overview of the drug supply chain landscape, as you can see here, moving from supplier to manufacturer all the way to the patient who gets the drug, the traceability of the drug is very linear. This is like everyone standing in a line looking forward. Everyone can see ahead of them, but no one can see behind them to verify that what they're getting is actually true. This lends itself to the single biggest problem in our industry, prescription drug counterfeit. $31 billion. This is the amount the counterfeit pharmaceutical industry was worth in 2018 in the USA alone. Furthermore, 1 million people died last year due to taking counterfeit pharmaceuticals. This is a huge problem which we're looking to solve. In 2013, the Congress enacted the Drug Supply Chain Security Act, which would change the landscape of pharmaceutical supply chain forever. The main four provisions are outlined here. To begin, product identification. This means that all members of the supply chain must place a unique product identifier on prescription drug packages, for example using a barcode, which is also known as the serialization requirement. Next, the product tracing. This means that all members of the supply chain must provide information about a drug and who handled it each time it is sold in the market. Next, product verification. This means that all members of the supply chain have to establish systems and processes to be able to verify the product identifier. And finally, notification. This means that all must notify the FDA and other stakeholders if an illegitimate drug is found. The ultimatum for all this to come through is 2023. And this means that all supply chain members must have an electronic interoperable system to enable package level traceability and verification, i.e. combining all four of these elements. So this is what the timeline for this looks like. As we said, it began in 2013, and the mandate for the manufacturers to serialize products, i.e. the first part we just talked about, has already been implemented. Next, coming up this year, the mandate for distributor traceability will be come into play. And then finally, by 2023, all members of the supply chain must have this. So this is the bottom line. All pharmaceutical companies, including Johnson & Johnson, must comply with this system. So the goal now is to track the legal change of ownership of prescription medicines from Johnson & Johnson's supply chain. As we mentioned, the problem ranges from the serialization of the drug unit information from trading partners to the authenticity. The solution that we're proposing is an immutable ledger to register proof of transactions. This runs using a smart contract which executes the business rules. So to give you an overview, now that we've identified the problem, we're now going to see if blockchain is the solution and how it is the solution. As you can see here on the right, it is compatible in all areas we just talked about, ranging from product identification to tracing to verification all the way to information requirement. We contend that this is the best solution, blockchain, for Johnson & Johnson moving forward in this domain. So to move on to the use case, how is this currently working in practice? So to begin, in 2017, we started conducting tests and a pilot scheme. The main five people who are using, ranging from large manufacturers such as Pfizer and Genentech, all the way to wholesalers to McKesson and Amerisource, are outlined in the diagram above, ranging in America on the East Coast and West Coast mainly. So, as we mentioned before, the aim of this Mediledger is to prevent counterfeit medicines from circulating, abiding by the DSCSA law. The first prototype was launched in 2017 as a joint venture between Chronicles and Link Lab, which are two startups based in San Francisco. And now a working group was formed in June 2018 to begin the prototype blockchain solution, which ran on the Ethereum network. So the results, how did this work? The working group below tested the system in June 2018 and the responses were very good. Specifically, it was 110 milliseconds from the same coast and 360 seconds for the system to run, which is under the 1 second mark which the DSCSA requires. Furthermore, the scalable solutions return, which is one of the main tenets of this, is that the verifying the serial number on the drugs is authentic worked perfectly. Next, the product production began industry-wide operating model, i.e. commercial in place, began in Q4 of 2018. So is this just a pharmaceutical issue, or are there other industries which are also including blockchain in their supply chain? The answer is yes, and the closest one to the Mediledger is IBM Food Trust. So IBM Food Trust is a coalition between IBM and Walmart. Walmart mandated its green suppliers to have one-step back traceability on their blockchain network by the 31st of January 2019, which is based on the right, as you can see. Furthermore, it made each supplier make their own suppliers join the group by the 20th of September 2019. The supply chain processes must go on the IBM's Food Trust blockchain, and just like the Mediledger, you can see here that the results are very quick. It takes 2.2 seconds to find the source, i.e. the variability and the traceability of the supply chain, versus 2 days normally. These are overlapping results with Mediledger. So the aim of both of these use cases is the same. The only difference is that IBM Food Trust has implemented it before. So the traceability and security in a supply chain is the same. The timeline is roughly the same, with 18 months for commercial availability and the Food Trust versus 21 months for Mediledger. Furthermore, the scale, it was 10 companies during the original pilot for IBM Food Trust versus 5 for Mediledger. So the results. The current IBM Food Trust solution costs between $100 to $10,000 per month, depending on the size of the company, and the savings have been huge, ranging from food traceability has increased 99.9% and trade document workflow has decreased 97%. So now that we've seen the use case and the potential for this to disrupt the entire industry, we are now going to look at the technical solution and how this blockchain actually works. So Mediledger will host a private permission distributed ledger in Johnson & Johnson's supply chain ecosystem. A private permissioned is a ledger that is only used by the participants that maintain its integrity. Mediledger's solution will provide a trusted network for pre-approved traders who would maintain the integrity of the system. As the transaction occurs in the supply chain, manufacturer 1 sends a private message to the next trader in the supply chain. Once the proof of manufacturer 1 is validated against the proof of distributor 2, the transaction is entered in the block. This way, a chain of immutable transactions are recorded in the shared ledger, where each trader in the supply chain has a true copy of the transaction. The private message in the DLT resolves the identification problem, the smart contract verifying the proofs resolves the verification problem, and the immutable ledger of transactions resolves the traceability problem. So moving on to the verification mechanism and how this occurs. So Mediledger's smart contract, which is known as a zero knowledge proof cryptography, is used to validate the authenticity of the traders in the supply chain. If the proof of the trader 1 does not match the proof of trader 2, the transaction cost will not be recorded in the ledger, and notification will be sent back to the traders. This ensures that the verified traders enter validated transactions into the block and the counterfeit drugs cannot enter. So to give you a holistic view, what goes into the block at each stage? As you can see here, due to a large number of participants in the block, minimal data goes into the block, just enough to maintain governance and compliance with the regulatory views. Only relevant transactions such as information and shipping information are included. Of course, each company within its own ERP system may store additional information that would only be visible to them and will not go into the block. Therefore, issues of confidentiality and data privacy are maintained. So moving on next to the consensus and incentives. Why would you use this? The proof authority consensus positions identifies a form of stake and enables all approved parties to validate the transaction. By joining Mediledger, not only Johnson & Johnson and its supply chain partners will comply to the law, but also the firm will trust a network of trusted and reputable group working so far. So why would you choose a blockchain in the first place? To answer this question, we've come up with a tech comparison matrix using blockchain, specifically public versus private versus traditional uses. So as you can see here, the private blockchain is by far the best solution, mainly for confidentiality reasons, and in whole, you can see that it ticks all the boxes here, ranging from immutable storage to identification, tracing, and verification, all the things that have to be required under the law. So as we mentioned before, the business advantages will be ranging from industry level to internal. Specifically, I'd like to look at the financial forecast. So ranging from Johnson & Johnson's balance sheet from 2018, we can see that $362 million was spent on fraudulent pharmaceutical returns last year alone. Using our Mediledger blockchain, we estimate that eliminating counterfeit medicine chargebacks will save Johnson & Johnson between 20 to 40% in the short term. This is roughly between $70 to $140 million, and then this will range to much higher savings in the future, just as the IBM food implementation also did. So now that we've looked at the IBM Food Trust, we're also going to look at our main competitor, which is the coalition between IBM and SAP. Specifically, we are unmatched in the specific type of blockchain that we supply for the pharmaceutical supply chain. The one outlined here is mainly for pharmaceutical cold chain, which means that it focuses on the temperature sensors which are inserted into the package, and then the data is stored locally and then sent to a private blockchain. The main point here is that Mediledger and the IBM SAP solution are looking at two different problems. One is looking at the counterfeit drug problem, which is Mediledger, and the IBM SAP solution is looking at temperature pharmaceutical movement. So, moving on to our recommendation for Johnson & Johnson. Given the things that we have said so far, we believe that a distributed ledger technology is the best compliant solution for Johnson & Johnson's drug supply chain needs. Furthermore, a private permission blockchain is conducive to meeting legal requirements while securing data confidentiality. Mediledger's DLT solution provides a ready-to-join working group, including industry leaders such as Pfizer, which will meet Johnson & Johnson's specific needs. We recommend that Johnson & Johnson's trading partners adopt the GS1's EPCIS and ASN standards in the future for sharing traceability and identification information between trading partners. This was a central tenet to why IBM worked so well in its food blockchain, and we recommend it also. So our implementation timeline. So we recommend that Johnson & Johnson join the working group, which we've established so far, in Q2 of 2019, following beta tests and employee training, which will be supplied by one of the parts of our company, and onboarding Johnson & Johnson's supply chain ecosystem eventually by Q4 of 2019. Finally, the completion, which we estimate will take Q3 of 2021. This is based off the use cases. When Pfizer, it took them 2 years to gradually build up to a near full implementation, and also the more recent case of Carrefour, which have joined the IBM Food Trust, and their implementation is also a 2-year range. So lastly, we're going to look at the limitations and challenges of implementing this in the most trustful way possible. So we would like to show you and highlight the two main parts here that we think are particularly interesting. Firstly, we're going to look at onboarding trading partners, which represents a high risk, and therefore Johnson & Johnson needs to ensure seamless communication and launch the DSCSA awareness campaign and roadshows. Secondly, we're going to look at the skill gap, which represents a medium risk. To mitigate, the Mediledger team will help provide and train employees in Johnson & Johnson. Overall, we think that we are the best solution for Johnson & Johnson, and we hope that you agree. Thank you for your time.